It makes a big difference. Sorry about that. It does make a big difference for me. So thank you very much. And I'm glad this has been a course change for a lot of people. And I think my camera's out of focus. I think there we go. In the interim, last night, hopefully there were some good insights that you got and you were able to contemplate what is really going on behind the scenes. And my ultimate goal is to fundamentally change not just the skills that you're using or the implementation of these techniques, but just the way that you view human beings and the way that you see the world. And those are the critical turning points I wanted you to have for this course. So I knew that that was a big domino for a lot of people that I teach, including some of our government people that I teach. That domino tends to begin with learning about human beings and seeing them differently. So once we see things differently, our ideas change and everything else. That's not good. If you hit that button on the back, it'll change to aperture priority, just the circle button. Nope, the middle. So to kick things off today, I am going to show you one more video, and I promise, I firmly believe that it's the final video, and I won't video you to death. But I want you to get this video because it really illustrates a point following up to everything that we talked about thus far, the point that the behavior really does matter a lot when it comes to how we're prioritizing our decision processes and making internal unconscious decisions. Should I follow this person or not? And we're going to get to the video right in just a second. But before we do, I'd like you to, before we watch this, I'd like you to think about the fate model we learned about yesterday. And the fate model is always running as a radar. It's a radar and it's a decision making system at the same time. So I want you to process that for just a second. And while this video is coming up, I just want you to process this video in your head using your knowledge of the fate model. Oh, hold on one second. There we go.
It's obvious that we don't intervene in many kind of emergency situations because there's too great a risk to our life or limb. But now, what happens when you're in a situation where if you don't act, there could be a risk to your life? Imagine you're in a room and a smoke alarm goes off, smoke is pouring out from under the door, and if you don't leave that room quickly, a fire could erupt and you could be suffocated or burned to death. It's obvious what you do. But now, again, what happens if you're in that same room and there are 10 other people and all of them do nothing? Do you take action when other people define the situation as do nothing rather than do something?
Sorry, that was the wrong video. Here it is.
When your life is at stake by following the herd.
Behaving differently from your group can make you an outcast. But what would you do if you knew your group was entirely wrong? Would you, for example, sit in a burning room just because everyone else does?
All right. Here's the correct video. Sorry they were out of order. My sincere apologies.
How easy or difficult is it for us to do what authorities tell us to do? In some cases, authorities are just. They deserve our respect. In other cases, authorities are not just. They're in fact unjust, or they're false authorities. What you're going to see is an interesting demonstration in which some guy dressed in a blue suit with a little conductor's cap tells a stranger that when this other person tries to run away, he should hit him with this taser, which delivers, thousands of volts, enough to almost kill him. Why would anybody do it? Let's see this study in action.
Charlie appears to be guarding this man. In fact, he's another actor. The gadget in his hand is homemade and harmless. But that's not what he tells this passerby.
I've got to go and get, I've not got my walkie-talkie, I've got to go and get help. Can I just hand you this? Now don't, it's just precautionary, right? Now it's perfectly safe. If you touch it on him, it'll give him one hell of a shock. It's 40,000 volts. It'll disarm him. Beyond that, but now, if he moves...
I use this.
If he moves, you use that, right?
I won't get in trouble.
No, you won't get in trouble. You've got my word. Don't move.
It's a bizarre situation for the passerby. He knows nothing about Charlie or his supposed suspect. Is he really prepared to administer an electric shock?
Look, he's not around anymore, all right? So I'm just going to make a move, all right?
No, don't.
Look, honestly.
Under that. Stay there.
Fucking
Do it
hell.
again. Good idea. Sit.
This man wasn't alone. Half the people stopped by Charlie reacted the same way.
Told you to sit.
It's disturbing that ordinary people can get caught up in situations where they do things that they normally regard as immoral or unacceptable. An authority figure asks you to inflict pain on somebody, and it's very difficult to refuse. And this is the kind of situation where unjust authority can gain power, and some very distressing consequences can come out of it.
Would you obey this man? He's Charlie, our actor, dressed to look like he's in charge, though he's in charge of nothing except a bogus uniform. We've brought him to Edmonton in North London, to the shopping centre, to find out exactly how obedient people are.
Excuse me, madam, sorry, could I just stop you? You're about to pass between me and the red bench. Could I just ask you to go the other side? Thanks. That's great. Oh, and just be on the apple, it'd be great. Oh, look. Thanks very much, madam. These slabs, I couldn't just ask you to knock it down for me. You're probably heavier than I am. Can you give it a good old jump? Yeah, actually, let me move that way. Can you just jump, please? Yeah, no, two-footed probably, best. I couldn't just ask you to litter, could I? To what? To litter. Yeah. Yeah, have you got anything you could possibly quickly litter? Do you use that? It's probably all right. Okay. Yeah, could you just litter for me, please, sir? Just twice would be great. Just kick it away, otherwise it won't. That's it. Give it a kick. Couldn't ask you just to pop that in your other hand, could I? Thanks, that's excellent. Could I ask you to lead with your left? Yes? And just slowly, really, basically.
It's a simple experiment, but amazingly, it works. Out of uniform, though, it's a different story.
Oh, sir, could I just ask you to switch bags with your hands? Just... You couldn't just go and just touch that brick? No?
But with the uniform, 70% of people follow Charlie's bizarre instructions to the letter.
Oh, fine. Give it one more, actually. Good, the wind's a bit weak. That's it. You want my dental records here? That's proof enough that this is quality sweet corn. Bit harder, please, sir.
He's in uniform,
Stop the bag.
so they obey.
So it was pretty ridiculous. There's a lot of stuff going on in the video. He's asking him to do some pretty ridiculous things. But the reason they obey, we tend to think, oh, it's because of a uniform. But I think all of us now know better, that the uniform is something we learned in our lifetime that's triggering a script from our ancestors. So it's a lifetime script that's triggering and activating a script that we got from our ancestors. So we have a lot going on there that we're seeing. And if you recall the woman yesterday who wanted to help the person laying on the ground, and she was hesitant, and something made her do it. Something gave her what we are in the business of, and that is permission. So we are all in the business of permission, not persuasion. So the more extreme we need the behavior to be, the more drastic the change in behavior we need to be, the more we are in the business of permission. So persuasion is great when you are trying to get something small out of a person. You try to convince someone to go to a new restaurant. Permission is something completely different. One thing that we didn't talk about yesterday that is part of the Milgram experiment findings is Dr. Stanley Milgram, the guy who ran the experiment at Yale, called this a agentic shift. So this state that a person goes into where they're doing these things is called an agentic shift. And basically the root word of this is agent. The person becomes an agent for the person that is in authority. So there is, in the situation where there was someone laying on the ground who needed help, there is a diffusion of responsibility. So the responsibility for the injured person is diffused to an extent that no one feels personally responsible. In fact, the research actually shows us that the more people are around when you get injured, the less likely you are to receive help from anybody. The less people that are around, the more likely you are to receive help, because of the responsibility is no longer diffused. And if you look at the Milgram experiment, we also saw a diffusion of responsibility. So we feel that responsibility is diffused in any situation where there's an authority figure present. And I'll push my audio a little higher. So the authority figure makes us feel like an agent. So when he asked that man in the previous video to litter on the ground and just throw a piece of trash down, he is doing something against his moral code, I'm guessing. And he's doing it because the responsibility is diffused into the authority figure. And hopefully that makes sense. But there's something going on in the brain. There are 5 triggers in the brain that need to be met in order for this feeling or this permission to start taking place. So just for a moment, if we remember the woman from yesterday, if you put yourself into her shoes and you're standing there at Liverpool Street Station, which is in London, and you're standing there at those steps and this person needs help and you're in this woman's shoes, and of course none of us would ever hesitate. We would all be first on the scene and we would never fall victim to any of this, but those other people would. And I want you just to imagine that you're hesitant right at that moment. So there's 5 things your brain is scanning for here in a scenario like this. And the first one is movement. So she's standing there staring at the person who needs help. And all of a sudden, you can even watch the video back. You see her head jerk to her left, and she's looking at someone in the crowd that's moving differently than everyone else. So does that person maintain or lose her attention? So it's obviously she's going to keep paying attention to what that person's doing because of that person's movement. So let's say the person's might be moving potentially towards the person that needs help, the direction that this person wants to go. The next thing, like we said yesterday, when I asked the group, what if that was a homeless person rushing over to help and not a man in uniform, but a homeless person limping over to this drunken person on the ground? Then they're lost. This person's lost the permission. The permission disappears. So the second one is appearance. So it's movement, appearance. So let's go back and just say that it's a random stranger. So they see the movement, they look, and the person's wearing like a business suit. So does that mean the permission chain is still continuing? Yes. If they were not wearing a suit, if they're wearing something way unusual or socially unacceptable, we lose the permission. It disappears. So movement and appearance are the first 2. The next one is confidence. So let's say this woman sees this guy out of the corner of her eye. He might be walking towards the person who needs help. He's wearing a business suit, but he's also very hesitant. He's looking around the crowd for someone else to be first. So this lack of confidence stops the chain of permission in her head. He's not confident in what he's doing. He's not walking directly to the person. He's not doing it directly. So his lowered confidence stops the permission chain in her head. And she is unaware of all of this. So finally, these last 2, the number 4. So let's say she looks, he's wearing a suit, and he's walking very confidently. Does he maintain her attention? Yes or no? Yes, he does. But he's checking his phone. His face is buried in his phone. Does he even see the guy that needs help? She has no idea. So that is connection. Is he connected to some kind of outcome? So in this, we see she turns her head, she sees the man moving. Then her brain registers the man is wearing a suit. Then her brain registers the man is confident. Then her brain registers he is totally connected to what's going on. He sees the person on the ground. He's connected to the outcome. And finally, she determines his intent. And this intent is the final phase. So it's movement, appearance, confidence, connection, and intent. Those 5 things line up to trigger the permission process in the brain. You can go back and analyze the Milgram experiment. We can do the smoke-filled room experiment or this police officer experiment that you just saw with the taser. It's movement first, appearance, confidence, connection, and intent. And you notice that appearance is the second one. The guy changed out of the police officer uniform. He was still moving the same. So the movement got the people's attention. You notice they would look at him as he approached them. But the moment they realized the appearance was not of an authority figure or a respectable person, the chain was broken. And at that moment, the permission chain became broken in that person's head to do anything else. So those are the things that happen to our brain in order in that process. But I want to encourage you to watch for this in business meetings or negotiations or wherever you deal with humans. You will start to see this playing out on a very regular basis. And the movement of self-confident people is pretty apparent to almost anyone, even small children. Think of the last time you walked through an airport, a busy street, and how most people agree to the social concept of walking like each other. This behavior actually makes it easier for us to navigate in crowded areas. And this crowd walk is programmed in us as an automatic response to being in crowds for the last couple million years. And the more we do it, the more it gets ingrained into our behavior. But how does it help us? And I think the less we have to focus on the environment, the less our brain has to work. So things that we do all the time are memorized into these behavioral patterns that we call scripts, but they help us to save mental effort. So tying our shoes would be exhausting if we hadn't developed muscle memory, or what we call muscle memory. Walking through a crowd would require extremely constant attention if our brains didn't make it into a shortcut. So when we're moving through any kind of crowd, we see crowds behaving like crowds, and we can spot a confident person far away. There's even a bridge in London, I forget the name of it, but it was built to withstand higher than hurricane force winds. And the architects were like MIT graduate level people who built this thing. And as it turns out, and there's a great YouTube on this you can watch later, they didn't take any training in psychology. And they didn't realize that just this 1 millimeter left and right movement of the bridge, which it was designed to move around and flex, made people start walking in extreme crowd behavior and start taking steps at the same time. And the bridge eventually developed a 12-foot left to right sway, so a 24-foot lateral movement as people were walking on this thing. It's ridiculous. You can see the video of it. But confident people also have posture, carriage, and demeanor of a confident person. And when you move up the scale on what we're going to look at later called the self-assessment matrix, you're going to see a noticeable reaction in other people. And the amount of focus that you're able to bring to situations is going to determine, or is going to be determined by how much mental energy you're expending in other places. For example, when a person has a strong sense of confidence, self-monitoring, anxiety, social discomfort, and other mental processes aren't there to expend a bunch of their mental energy. So having focus, whether it's on a task or a person that we're speaking to, creates followership. Focus in other people creates followership. And I want you just to remember that people, especially strangers, have zero ability to judge who you are and how to treat you other than from your own behavior. So when people see you being completely confident in any situation, they assume that that's your normal behavior, and they can become more comfortable when you're around. And I started life with social anxiety, and I had this weird internal belief unconsciously that if I was a little less comfortable and a little less confident, then that comfort and confidence would just go to the other person and they would have a great day. And that's not how it works. Anxiety, insecurity, and confidence are all contagious, it turns out. So they're more likely to follow your lead. If you behave confidently in a new situation, that means that other people have treated you with respect hundreds of times in the past. Do we all agree on that? Hopefully, because our brain works on evidence. Everything is evidence-based. I need a piece of evidence in order to act a certain way in the future. So I'm not going to be confident unless I've done this before. So if you're confident in a brand new situation with a brand new person, they automatically assume that everyone else treats you with a tremendous amount of respect. So now we're not just bringing authority into it, we're bringing focus and tribe. So just you and one other person, you're still affecting the tribe mentality. Because if they act like this with me, they must act like this with everyone, and they must have good results from it. So they're not just following you, they're following along with the tribe that they're imagining in their own head, who you have lived with or worked with for your entire life. But I think novelty's fitting in here too. The more a scenario differs from something that's common for somebody, the more focused we are. We talked about this yesterday. And the more prone to suggestibility they become. And the more those things are leveled up, the more we search for, and this is vitally important, the more we have focus and suggestibility, the more we are searching for environmental indicators for our own behavior. How should I be acting in this scenario? Something's new, something's different, and there's people around. The more those three things are there, the more the brain is searching and asking questions of how should I be behaving right now? So it's kind of a novelty, focus, suggestibility, scan, screen, and then follow. Novelty, focus, suggestibility, scan, screen, and follow is kind of just summing up what we talked about with this process, the MACCI process: movement, appearance, confidence, connection, and internal feelings. And these apply in the smoke-filled room, the bystander effect, the Milgram experiment. All had novelty, and none of the researchers wrote about the novelty of the situation, sadly. So I want to bring something on screen for you, if I can here. So these are the tripwires: the movement, appearance, confidence, connection, and internal feeling or intent. So what might feel like a weakness to us, like I'm prone to obeying people, actually helped our ancestors live and kept them alive. And it's actually literally the reason that you are breathing right now is because of those programs. And that's okay. So if we're looking at everything through this lens, movement is the most important. And let's talk a little bit about what movement really is. What I mean by this is that I teach behavior profiling. Obviously, this is not a course about that, but there's one thing I will always say when it comes to human behavior, and that is when any human being starts moving fast, they're fearful. Any animal that is fearful moves fast. If you think how fast like a Chihuahua would turn its head for a sound in the house versus a Rottweiler who is not very afraid, the Rottweiler moves slowly, the Chihuahua moves quickly. So as a piece of homework, and I would love to hear back how this worked out for you, I want you to try to spend 5 days never moving faster than you could if you were underwater, if you were standing in a swimming pool. So make the swimming pool your speed limit. And I want you to see how people respond differently, that we're communicating. Remember this, other people's mammal brains are experts in behavior profiling. So we all have an expert behavior profiler in there. It just sucks that they don't speak English or any language. So what we're doing is sending a signal to the other person of, I'm not fearful. This is not something that's aggressive. And the biggest problem I've ever run into when teaching confidence to anybody, military, intelligence, or otherwise, is that people tend to associate confidence with aggression. And it is absolutely non-aggressive. So true confidence is absolutely contagious. False confidence makes people feel small. Real confidence makes people confident. So if I'm trying to transfer that to someone else, if I'm in a sales situation, would I want someone to be insecure or confident? I want confidence in other people. I want to transfer confidence. So genuine confidence is contagious. So it starts with permission inside of you. It goes through a whole bunch of psychological processes, transfers to the other person, and then it ends up in permission. So I have permission before I have confidence, and the other person ends with permission. We start and they end, and it's permission on both ends. So I've brought a guest to speak tonight who is absolutely one of the best speakers on confidence. He's going to explain this for about maybe 15 to 25 minutes or so. But I want you to hear his opinion on how confidence works, how to develop it quickly, which we're going to talk about it as well. But I want you to at least hear from another person that I consider to be a world-leading expert on the subject. And if you are in here, Marcel, go ahead and unmute. And
Hey.
I'd like to introduce you to Marcel Klein. He is a 22-year-old millionaire who lives in Los Angeles and teaches this very thing. He teaches people to be confident and charges quite a bit of money for it. But I brought him in here for you guys just to hear exactly the anatomy of confidence and his ideas and how this stuff works. So, Marcel.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. My name is Marcel Klein, and I wasn't always confident. It's not something that you're born with. A lot of people think that's the case, and it's not at all. It's something that you learn. And a big thing I want to point out before I even begin talking about confidence is that if you have a negative association to anything, including confidence, right, you're never going to allow yourself mentally to go there. You're not going to give yourself permission to learn that behavior or that trait. So when you think about confidence, a lot of people think confidence is cockiness, it's arrogance, it's something that people will perceive in a negative light. But that's because maybe they haven't been around the right kind of people. So their idea of what was confidence is wrong. Now, some people here are really confident, right? So just really quick, a show of hands, how many of you guys would say you're, at least an 8 out of 10 in confidence? For those of you who have your video on. Great. So everyone who didn't raise your hand, you're confident that you're not confident, right? In other words, you give yourself permission to not be confident, but there's no such thing. So confidence is a concept that a lot of people don't understand, and it really comes down to permission. So I want you to understand that everything we do is a hierarchy, right? So there is this confidence hierarchy, this authoritative, this dominance hierarchy, and who's the most authoritative person in an environment. And confidence allows you to come off as one of, if not the most authoritative person. So for the most part, when we're checking status and we're trying to evaluate somebody's status, we look at their monetary gain, right? How successful are they? How attractive are they? How famous or popular are they? Right? How respected are they in the community? And that usually is the first thing we look at from a distance. But let's say we're all in an even room and it's an even playing field. Well, confidence is going to be the trait that we look at the most. And therefore, if you walk into a room, we're unconsciously always pinging off other people. Like, okay, how confident are they? How confident are they? Now, the more confident you are, the more certain you are of yourself, the less you're going to ping off other people, the less you're going to look for validation from the environment because you're self-validating. So confidence really is someone who allows themselves to feel and act in a certain way without external permission. Maybe you got the permission from previous experience and that's why you're so comfortable. But regardless, when you enter that situation, you're not looking for other people's validation. So what is confidence and what does it actually feel like? Because people may not know what it feels like. So I want you to understand, confidence literally equals comfort. The more comfortable you are, the more confident you are. So how do we increase our confidence? Well, we do things that make us uncomfortable. If it's uncomfortable for you to talk in a room or approach random people, I would do that because that's how you get comfortable with the situation. eventually what happens, and this is where a term that both Chase and I use called true confidence comes into play. True confidence is when you've become comfortable being uncomfortable. You're so used to facing that uncomfort that you give yourself permission even when you don't feel like you should have. So it's not that someone confident doesn't feel resistance. It's not that when I go on stage or when I'm at a seminar or when I go to hypnotize some random person on the street, it's not like I don't feel the resistance, right? I feel it, but I do it anyways. And that's what true confidence is. Now, a lot of the time people will mistake confidence for someone who's cocky or arrogant. Confidence comes from a place of complete self-certainty. It comes from abundance. Now, if you look at a hierarchy, right, you were to look at primates. The person or the primate that's, let's say, the alpha male or has the highest ranking, well, they get access to the most resources. They get access to food first. They get access to all the resources. They get to mate first. So it's up to them whether or not they want to give more to the rest of the group. So because they have more, they tend to give more. Usually someone in abundance, someone in confidence, in a place of complete certainty in themselves, is more generous. They want to lift people up. Now, sometimes you'll see someone who is successful, right? And someone who does seem to be famous, but they're not actually internally confident. And what they'll do is they'll put other people down because mentally, psychologically, they're in scarcity. They have a lack of resources psychologically. So if you are in scarcity, it really indicates confidence level. So the most generous people, usually, not someone who's just doing it for show, but someone who just gives, like when no one's looking, what are you giving to somebody else, right? How generous are you to your friends, to your family? How much do you want to give? That's usually an indication of higher level of confidence because you're not looking at yourself. You're not like, what's in it for me? What can I do for me? It becomes an altruistic thing. What can I do for others? Because you're out of your head. When you're not confident, you're really in your head. You're taking all your mental focus and you're like, what are they going to think about me? How am I feeling? What am I doing? Whereas if you're really comfortable and you're really confident, you don't really care. You're not insecure. If you're in your room alone, right, and no one's around, you'll probably fart, you'll do a bunch of different things. Now, it doesn't mean you should be disgusting and when you're confident, you shouldn't walk around and just go do that. That's not something you should do. But you don't think about what others are thinking about you, right? When you're in your room alone, you can walk around naked and you don't care. So how can you act with others the same way you act by yourself? That's really what confidence is how can I be around others the same way I am with myself, but in a good mood? Usually when you're confident, you tend to be in a happier state, right? The reason is because when you're in a negative state, right, you're kind of depressed, you're sad, you're anxious, that comes from looking at your environment and needing the environment to give you feedback. So if the environment and things are not going in my way, for example, I want to be, I don't know, let's say I have a business goal or a relationship goal, I'm pursuing somebody or I'm after a sale, I'm trying to persuade someone and it's not going my way, right? Someone who's not confident will take that information and react. And all of a sudden they'll react and they'll let that information affect them. So they'll go into a negative state. Someone who's very confident will take that information, also react, but not react to the situation, but instead of the word react, we adapt. We become flexible. So if I'm talking to someone and a strategy I'm using isn't working, right? How many of us here have gotten into a fight or an argument with a friend, family member, or in a relationship? Now, usually what happens is we start to become reactive to one another. One person yells and the other person yells, and it just becomes more and more and more until somebody stops reacting and adapts and then says sorry or becomes flexible, and then it settles everything down. So it's not just when you're interacting with others that confidence is important, but it's when you're interacting with yourself. Because there are going to be times where you're going to wake up and things aren't going to go your way. You're going to get some negative news of some sort, right? There could be something that happens, especially if you own a business, you know this, right? That you can wake up one day and everything's not going your way. So confidence is knowing 100% with 100% certainty that you're going to make sure that the positive outcome is the only outcome. Right? So you're not letting the feedback that comes to you affect you. Now, does it make things a little bit more uncomfortable? Sure. Is it something I want to deal with, right? If I have a business and out of nowhere things are turning upside down, no, it's not something I want to deal with. However, with confidence, you know it'll still work out. Now, how does this come into play when you're talking about authority or you're working around other people? Well, most people are reactive to others. Now, I'll give you an example. I went to a movie premiere, the Avengers Endgame. And a female friend of mine invited me and she brought 3 of her friends. 2 of them are starring in the movie and one of them is just a really, really famous model. And out of nowhere, they were really, really rude to me, right? Like for no reason, just started being really rude. And I think it was more of a power play, right? To kind of test, because I come off very confident, very comfortable. And you'll notice that in an environment, the most confident people will often be tested, but they're unreactive. So I just didn't react. I just cracked a joke. I laughed. I gave it back to them. And immediately there was a completely different dynamic. They started qualifying themselves to me. Now, what did that show me? Well, imagine I had reacted in a negative light there. So I'll tell you what they said, just to be specific. They're like, oh my God, why would you sit there? Like, you smell bad. I never smell bad. I always brush my teeth. I'm always chewing gum, right? I'm very, very hygienic. So I knew that statement's not even true. It doesn't even matter. But they told me, one of them said I smell bad. And she's like, yeah, you're gross. And no one even smelled bad in the movie theater. I have very sensitive smell, right? Very, very sensitive sense of smell. So that it was just something to kind of try and embarrass me. And I started laughing and I'm like, so be it. And I just picked my arms up, like that. And I was completely playing along. And after that, there was a completely opposite reaction. And the reason was because it showed that I was actually the authority in that interaction. Even though they were way more famous, way more popular, had way more status, right? All of a sudden now I was the one, and it doesn't matter that it's a female, even though it's a female interaction, female and male interaction. I'm just giving you, this could be with males. It happens with men as well. They immediately respected my authority. And that became very apparent to me. The more I would go out, because the way I became really confident is I'd go up to people to get rejected. I would try to hypnotize random people. I'd go to the mall and I'd be like, okay, who here says they can't be hypnotized? And then I would pick that person and I would hypnotize them. And, what I discovered is that people who say they can't be hypnotized, number one, they don't know what you know and they don't know what you don't know. Most of the time, people assume that we are so transparent in what everyone sees in us. No one knows you. No one knows anything about you. No one knows how much knowledge you have. No one knows anything about you except for your behavior, like Chase said. So when I would go hypnotize people and these individuals would say, you can't hypnotize me, I would literally bet. I would put $100 on it. And I didn't have $100 to put on it. And I would have, that was my last 100. And I'd walk around the mall because it forced me to make sure that I would not break my frame, right? I had to make sure that no matter what they gave me, I would not show weakness. I would not show any signs of uncomfort. Now, does that mean I didn't feel uncomfort? I did, absolutely. At the beginning, I felt a massive amount of uncomfort, right? So I faked it. But people would respond. The people who said, the individuals that said they could not be hypnotized, and the ones who resisted me the most, when I was the most confident, went in the easiest. Because they're testing me. What they're really doing when they're saying you can't hypnotize me, do they actually know what I know? Do they know if it's possible? Do they know if I can or I can't? They have no idea. So for them, they're just testing to see how I react to know whether or not that's an accurate statement. And when I respond very calmly and I smirk and I say, okay, you want to bet, right? They might come back at it, but they would still go in. Now that is not necessarily how I would go about hypnotizing someone today, because to be honest, it's not the most effective way, right? Instead of going like this, you should go together with someone. You should do it in rapport. But this is how I built a lot of confidence. I would go towards the most resistant things, people who would give me the absolute opposite feedback of what I wanted, and I got comfortable with that. And what it taught me is this, and I think you guys should write this down. Confidence really comes down to focus. Focusing, right, on the positive outcome. No matter what happens out here, I know things are going to work out, right? So let's say it's business. Your business isn't working out. You know, no matter what, it will work out. Then you're confident in that outcome. You're going to be calm. In a relationship, you might be in a fight. Things might be giving you negative feedback. Well, if you knew for a fact, you could either find someone else, for a fact, you'd find someone else that you'd be happy with, or it would work out with that person. You wouldn't feel that uncomfort. You'd become confident again. You'd be confident that you would be happy. The mind doesn't know the difference between fiction and reality. Most of you, I'm sure, know this. Therefore, when you're getting feedback, you have two options. You can let reality, which isn't going your way, give you the feedback and then use that to internalize your emotional state. Or you can create the reality you desire and be so confident in that it's going to work out. I have absolutely almost no fear of failure. And it's not that I didn't. I used to have a massive fear of failure. I'd always focus on why things would not work out. And I was confident in the fact that they wouldn't. And one day it clicked for me. I realized I'm so certain that things won't work out. And then because of that, I create that outcome. Through my actions or my lack of action, I now create the outcome that I don't desire. So I said, well, what if I just believe that things would work out? Now, I'm 23 years old. I have pushed the limits in every area of my life, both monetarily, emotionally. I've put myself in the most uncomfortable situations. If it's uncomfortable, I'm doing it, right? And I don't mean like skydiving. I'm talking about social situations. I'll go into a social setting and I'm going to make myself as uncomfortable as possible. And the reason is because everybody has it in them to be extremely confident like that. It's actually a switch you could turn on instantly. It's an emotion. Because if you were to think about it, right, if I'm around my closest friends, I'm very confident with them, right? You're going to be very, very confident with them. But one day you wake up and you have a zit on your face. Or one day you wake up and you feel like you didn't brush your teeth or something. Now you might be a little bit in your head. Your confidence goes down. When you reach a level of true confidence, it's not that you're not aware that maybe you're not as attractive today or you're not as hygienic today. It's that it doesn't affect you. You still know, hey, I'm still this confident. I'm still this certain. I'm not going to go, because I care about other people, I'm not going to go put them in an uncomfortable situation and smell bad and make them uncomfortable, right? But if anything, I become more empathetic because of the fact that I'm so not in my head. I'm very aware of how other people are responding, right? Because I'm confident, I'm not looking at what I'm doing. I'm focusing on how others are reacting. And I'm seeing, okay, does this behavior work or not? So confidence will get you there 90% of the time. Then if you want to get to the top percent of people who are really authoritative and really powerful, that's when you practice confident behavior. Because when you're able to practice, then you see, okay, does this work? Does this work? Does that work? And you start to notice, okay, when I'm confident, does this behavior work or does it not? Now, if you think about it, I can give someone a script, right? I have a sales script that closes probably 98 to 99% of people. The only reason someone would not purchase it is because they literally cannot afford it, right? It stacks it psychologically to where people can't say no. Now, if I give it to someone who's not confident, they'll close 1 out of 10. They'll close 1 out of 10. Perfect script. I've done it tens of thousands of times. Perfect script closes everybody, right? Whereas if I give it to someone who's very confident and they roughly barely even touch it, they'll probably close 60 to 70% of calls at the minimum. And someone who's confident and got it down, they'll close the same as me, right? So confidence allows you, and this is the biggest thing, confidence allows you to take advantage of opportunities that are already there, that are right in front of you. Most people have opportunities everywhere, but there's a part of your brain called the reticular activation system, RAS, right? That's the term. And it tells you what to focus on. And if you're not confident that you're going to get what you want, you're confident that you're going to get what you don't want. And therefore, your RAS isn't going to show you all the opportunities that are there. It's not going to show you how to go about what you want to go about. Instead, it's going to show you why you can't. And all of a sudden, now you're going to be in a negative state. Everything is a towards or away thing, right? So we're going towards things that make us feel good and away from things that make us feel bad. When you're confident, you'll go towards the outcomes you want because you believe you can get them. If I gave everyone here a lottery ticket and it was the losing lottery ticket, nobody would get up and go see. They wouldn't go cash it in. But if you knew for a fact that this was the winning lottery ticket, you would get up and you would go. It doesn't matter what was going on. If you had to hike a mile up a mountain, you would go cash it in because you knew there was a reward at the end of it. That's what confidence is. Confidence is being certain that there's a reward, that something good is going to happen at the end of this behavior. And anything that happens in between that doesn't matter, right? Most people get caught up, and this is the psychological process I go through. I'm not sure for most people, but this is what I go through. When you're doing something, and Chase briefly mentioned this, intention, we look at other people's intention, but we rarely look at our intention. What's our behavior? What's the intent of my behavior? Oftentimes, the intent of someone who's not as confident is to blend into the crowd so you don't get killed. Right? It's literally hardwired into our brain to blend into the crowd because we don't want others to judge us or reject us. Because if you were to get kicked out of your tribe, that would mean almost certain death. And if you weren't kicked out, you would definitely be beat up or something because it seems that you're challenging the authority inside of the tribe. Well, that's not the case anymore. That's not how things work now. Now people just respond to authority. So when you're confident, what you're really doing is you are allowing yourself, instead of suppressing your potential, you're expanding into what you can actually do. And most of the time, we don't see the opportunities because we literally cannot fathom that it's possible. If you don't think it's possible, you'll spend absolutely no mental time, not a single thought thinking about how it is possible. Instead, you'll spend most of your time thinking about why it's not possible. So Tony Robbins says, It's the ultimate resource is resourcefulness. And the reason is because most people are resourceful at being unresourceful. I'm so resourceful at being unresourceful. I could find a million reasons for why I won't do it rather than why I will. So all confidence is a state that we're training you to be like. And most people, 99.9% of the population is not confident, right? They're not confident. And it's because they're so scared of judgment. They're so scared of not getting approval from others that they suppress themselves in order to adapt or conform to the crowd. But the crowd isn't where you want to be for the most part. Now, it doesn't matter where you've gone, right? Because in some areas you excel. In some areas, let's say in businesses, a lot of you might be crushing it, right? Or you might have a perfect relationship. It doesn't mean that you're not confident in everything. Everyone's confident in something. Everyone's confident in a lot of things. But what can I do to make myself more confident socially all the time? How can I make this my default setting, right? You turn on a TV, there's a default brightness, there are default settings on it. And, if you play around with it, you can make it dimmer, you can make it more colorful. There's a lot of things you could do. Well, based on your programming and your upbringing and our DNA, right? Your DNA, depending on your upbringing, actually will bring out a place of confidence and not. Now, I'm sure some of you have gotten into that state on accident. Right? You go up to someone, you say hi to them, and then they respond positively. And all of a sudden, 2 more people come up to you because you're just in a good mood. And they're like, oh my God, you're awesome. And boom, you're accidentally in that state of confidence. And the rest of the evening, you had the best night of your life. Oh my God, it was so much fun because I was able to talk to everyone and do everything I wanted. Well, that can happen for you all the time. So how do you get into that state? And that's what I want to cover really quick. You have to identify your fear. If my fear is to go up to people, to talk to people, to get rejected by people, for people to find out that I'm going bald, for people to find out that, I'm really not that confident, whatever your beliefs are, right? If these are my fears, I need to face them, either by telling people it or by taking action. You're not going to get over your fear of confidence or fear of whatever it is by sitting at home thinking about it. You're going to have to actually go socialize. If you just spoke to 5 people a day for the next month, you would instantaneously be significantly more confident because you got more comfortable. Now, most people, again, stay comfortable. Like, oh, I'm more comfortable now, it's fun. It doesn't stop. As confident as I am, anytime I meet people that I see, for example, socially, the things that I've seen Chase do are so incredible. I didn't even know they were possible, right? So I wasn't confident that I could even do them. I wouldn't even think about how it can happen. When I was hanging out with him, what I saw him do, and I'll let him share if he wants to, was so incredible that my confidence level in what I'm able to do increased exponentially, right? Because all of a sudden I saw it was possible. So just knowing what's possible will make you more confident, right? Especially if you condition your mind to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. So there is one thing, and it's a quote from Tony Robbins that I really like, and I want you guys to get it, right? Write this down. If you can't, you must. If you feel uncomfortable, that's the moment you take action. You feel like that you're insecure about, you wanted to say hi to somebody and you see they have a husband or you see that with their wives, go say hi. In the moment you're feeling uncomfortable is when you should go do it. Now, obviously, don't go up to some gang member and be like, what's up, bro? That's not what I'm saying. I want you guys to do this intelligently, but everyday people in Walmart, in line, doesn't matter if you're shopping, say, hey, what's up? What's going on? And if you do this every day, even if you're uncomfortable, doesn't matter how old you are, you will increase your confidence level exponentially. And by the end of the month, you're not even going to be the same person. You're going to find, because you're more confident, you set bigger goals, you feel much, much better on your day-to-day. You're not going to be a victim. You're not going to be depressed. You're not going to sit there in pity. Instead, you're going to go out and you're going to want to give more. You're going to want to do more. You're going to feel energized like you probably haven't in your whole life, because your brain now believes it has higher status. You're going to have way more serotonin. When you focus on your goals and you go for it, you're going to have way more dopamine. You're going to feel incredible. And then your ability to connect with people increases drastically. If you look at chimpanzees, they did a study where they took the alpha male of the group, and they found that the alpha male had 2 to 3 times more testosterone and 2 to 3 times more oxytocin, which is the chemical for connection and empathy, than the rest of the tribe. So it actually tells you that the chemicals that make us feel the most incredible, the most connected, the most motivated, come from being the most confident. Confidence really is the key to being happy and successful and being authoritative, especially when it comes to influencing others. It is magnetic. People want to feel good. And someone who's confident, quite simply, makes others feel good, and not from a place of low value, right? If you look at someone who you think is really low value and they give you a compliment, it doesn't mean anything. But if your dream person, your idol, says, wow, you're incredible, wow, that'll feel really good, because they have more value, they have more confidence. Confidence is self-value. Value equals attraction. You find a penny on the ground, right? Confidence feels like comfort, but what it is really, attraction is value. Attraction equals value. So if you look at a penny on the ground, it's not that appealing. You look at $100 on the ground, you'll never forget it. I don't care how much money you have, because it's so rare, it's got way more value. So anything that's valuable, right? The traits that you find valuable in someone else, that's attractive. A job, an outcome, a goal, anything with pleasure that you find has more value is more attractive. By being confident, you're increasing your self-value and your perceived value. So you're immediately way more attractive to everybody. And I don't just mean intimately, I mean in business, I mean as a friend. People are going to want to be around you. Confidence will make you not just happy, but it'll make you popular, and people will literally be drawn to you like a magnet. I know we don't have much time today, so Chase, I'm gonna give it back to you, but thanks for having me on. Hopefully he's still here.
Thanks,
Chase,
Marcel.
you there? There you are.
That was fabulous. And I've just been looking at the comments. Everybody had some wonderful things to say. That was the most compact confidence lesson I've seen ever, I think.
Yeah, I tried to rush.
Great stuff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
I know you've got probably about 6,000 calls to make before the end of the day. So I'll let you go, or you can hang out if you like.
Yeah, I might keep it on in the background. I have a couple calls to make, but I love listening to you as always. So I'm going to stay on and for as long as I can.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
man.
you, Chase.
We can't do rounds of applause in Zoom. I think there's an emoji for it, but that might be a little ridiculous. Thanks, Fred. So what I'm going to do here is send you something, but before I send it to you, I'd like to explain it to you. There is a business book out there called Strengths Finder, and then there's another one called Strengths Finder 2.0. This helps you to figure out what you're strong at and what you're really good at. And it's a bunch of bullshit for the most part. Because I'd like you to imagine that you took the same approach to your vehicle. You have a really cool car. It's got the best engine in the world. And it's an unclassed engine. Like it's outclassing everything else. So you have the brand new Bugatti, and the engine in this car, you have spent a lifetime maintaining. And then when you buy this Car Strengths Finder book and you go through this quiz, it says, oh, your engine and your suspension and your steering controls and safety are all the best things about your car. So you write them all down on a little note card and you hang it on your wall and you say, wow, look at all these things my car's really good at. But it has 4 flat tires. And the book didn't tell you that. You're going to have a real hard time driving this thing with 4 flat tires. But it continues to tell you need to focus on your strengths. So with the 4 flat tires, you continue to drive the vehicle at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, and you continue to maintain the engine. You get home at the end of the day, there's rubber burning off of the wheels. You're chewed down to the rims of your car. You're about to explode or maybe catch on fire, but you pop the hood and you take a look at that engine, and it's great. It's a fabulous engine. And it's something to be excited about until it catches on fire. So I'd like to suggest that what if you took the strengths finding approach to your children? They're in school. Your kid's got straight A's in science, history, and math, and is failing English. And might have to do summer school, might have to make up a grade. But your kid comes home and you say, no, that's not important. You need to focus on your strengths. Focus on your strengths. Screw English. Don't study it. Don't even worry about it. So us going back to a quote from yesterday, whatever we're not aware of has the potential to ruin your life. So finding your strengths might feel good. And the reason I think that book might be a bestseller is because it just releases dopamine on every page and says, wow, this is such a brilliantly written book. And the brilliance of the author is actually in chemical triggering in the reader. So what I'm going to do is give you a weakness finder 2.0. And what I'd like you to do is be critically honest with yourself. We're actually going to do 2 of these. This one we're not going to do tonight. I'm going to give it to you to download and open on your computer here in about 10 seconds. But this is not science based. It's results based. And I have passed the 30,000 hour mark, maybe the 50,000 hour mark of doing this as a career a long time ago. So this is not peer reviewed. It's not science based. But it's based in results, and it absolutely works. So what I'm going to give you is called the Authority Traits Matrix. And before I send it to you, I want to tell you what these traits are. There's 5 we talked about, and I swear I didn't do this on purpose, but there's 5 triggers that make someone see you as an authority, and there's 5 traits of authority. And then later on, we're going to cover the 5 hidden off-camera traits of your personal life that make a difference in authority. So it kind of makes a triangle. I literally made it into a triangle. I'm going to bring that up on screen later. But I'm going to give you this matrix. So I'm going to bring it up on screen first. If I can push the right button here. There it is. This is the coolest thing ever. So here's the triangle. On the far right side, we have the effects of our behavior. This is movement, appearance, confidence, connection, and intent. On the left side is the thing I'm about to give you. And these are the traits or the behaviors that make someone see you, your behavior as an authority figure. And this is confidence, discipline. You don't need to write it down. Leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment. These 5 traits are what's going to be on the assessment that I'm going to drop in the chat right now. We're going to take a quick between 5-10 minute break, whatever you need. I'll come back at about the 7-minute mark and see how many people are back. But if I have to do a little potty break, let's do it now. But I'm going to drop this file of how to assess your level of confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment in here. And later on, we're going to do that as homework tonight, but later on, live in the moment, we're going to analyze the habits that you have on the very bottom. This is environment, time, appearance, social, and financial that affect how we're communicating and coming across to other people. We're going to bring that up later tonight. And if we don't finish today, I'll keep going tomorrow. So I'm not trying to cram this into 3 hours. And if you can't make it tomorrow, I'll give you the recording. I would much rather you get ROI out of this course than just give you a 6-hour course. That's not my concern. So if we're not finished up tonight by 7, then we'll roll over into tomorrow at the same time, and we will finish up then. So please don't worry about it. There's a lot of stuff to cover. But let's take a quick break. I'm going to drop this in here, but really quick, it looks like I thought it out. I thought it was in here. There it is. So this is what it looks like. So we see that on the left side, we have a slightly cropped image just because my camera hacking device to put it on Zoom is uncropped. But we have confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment. Along the top, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So each of these has its own little name. But in each block, there are a few character traits and a few behaviors that if you're a number 1 out of 5 on confidence, you will literally be able to identify exactly where you are in your real life, if you're honest with yourself, If you think back to yesterday, I've been persuading you to be brutally honest with yourself the entire day yesterday. So if you go through each one of these things, and I have a ballpoint pen or something, I'm going to put a tick mark on each one that I kind of identify with. So I'll get a 1 to 5 rating on each one of the 5 traits for authority. And what I can do with that is fabulous. So this isn't just an assessment, it's a roadmap. If I'm looking at myself on confidence as a number 3, and I know you can't read this, I'm going to send you the thing. If I'm a 3 on confidence, the goals that I should be setting for myself are right there for me in the number 4 block. And if I'm a number 4, my goals for self-confidence are in the number 5 block. So it's not just an assessment, it's a roadmap. So that's the file. I'm going to drop it into the chat right now, and then we'll jump on a quick break. And let me see if I can get that in there. And it's a PDF. And I left it unlocked because I know somebody had trouble yesterday, but please do not share it. That's all I ask. So hopefully everyone's able to double click that thing and pop it on your computer, and maybe just examine it during the break. Examine where you might be in some of these situations. And I am going to shut off my mic and camera for just a few minutes, and we'll be right back. Thanks, everybody.